Welcome to this latest video podcast in a series of podcasts about the new Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists online. The Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists, or ESDA, was released online on July 1st, and it's the Seventh-day Adventist Church's first online reference work that features thousands of entries from around the world on a variety of topics. If you haven't checked the ESDA website yet, please do so. It's at encyclopedia.adventist.org. You can browse more than 2,000 articles and 3,700 photographs. I'm David Trim. I am the editor of the encyclopedia, and with me today is Dr. Dragoslava Santrak, the managing editor of the encyclopedia and my co-host, and our guest today is Dr. Gary Krause, the director of the Office of Adventist Mission at the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. He is also an associate executive secretary of the General Conference and a member of the encyclopedia's editorial board. Gary, thank you very much for agreeing to be with us today.
It is my pleasure and my privilege, David.
Now, not everyone knows what the Office of Adventist Mission does, so please share with us, what does your job entail?
Okay, so the Office of Adventist Mission was formed several years ago, and it's kind of like an umbrella organization for two things. First of all, the Global Mission Initiative, which was voted in 1990, which is to start new groups of believers among new people groups around the world. Second, to care for mission awareness within the church, to let church members know what happens with their mission offerings, what is the broad palette of mission work happening around the world today. So it's global mission, and it is mission awareness. And with global mission, of course, we have church planting, we have urban centers of influence, we have our global mission centers building bridges to people of other world religions. So there's a variety of things that happen within that framework.
So when we talk about Adventist Mission, we don't mean just a small evangelistic series in one church. We're talking about something more global than that?
Yeah, it's a global view where we basically look at where the church is strong and where it is not strong. And in Global Mission, when they actually planned it, church leaders, they actually got out the world map and they looked at where the church was relatively strong, where it was present, where it wasn't. And so it's an intentional effort to say, how can we bring the good news of Jesus Christ to people who have not heard it before? And we do that within the framework of starting new groups of believers.
Yes, Dr. Krause, we are very happy to have someone who is passionate and knowledgeable about the Adventist Mission on the Encyclopedia editorial board, because one of the main goals of the Encyclopedia is to be a missionary tool to reach the world with the Adventist message. How do you think the ESDA fulfills this goal, even in a small way?
Well, you know, Dr. Santrak, when I was a kid, I remember my father had those green volumes of the SDA encyclopedia in his library. And there was the encyclopedia volume. And as a kid, maybe I was a nerd, I don't know, but I just loved to open up that volume and just at random, I would just go through and I would read stories. And stories are so powerful. We know that Jesus never spoke without telling a story. And as I look through this wonderful new tool, this online encyclopedia, I don't see it just as a depository of facts and figures and information. It's stories. And stories have the power to motivate. They have the power to inspire. And they also have the power to teach, because as we look at stories of what has happened, we can see things that worked and things that weren't so successful. So we can learn from the good things that happened, but we can also see that mistakes were made. And so as we look to our mission future, I see this as a wonderful tool, a resource to say, this is how God has led in our past. This is what we have learned. This is what we did wrong. And frankly, I mean, I'm naive enough to think that there may be some young people today who will cast their eyes over some of these stories and be inspired by the sacrifice and by the creativity and by the sheer energy of so many Adventists around the world who have been involved in mission and have made a tremendous impact for the Lord.
Yeah, that really encapsulates a large part of our dream for the encyclopedia. And I have to say, I also looked at the commentary set on my father's shelves, also a pastor, and admired them and sort of craved to have them, and then I did inherit them. But that includes the encyclopedia volume. So if we're nerds, it's all in there together. But you mention that need to learn lessons, that there's things to be taken away even from stories of falling short, of making mistakes, even of sin, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. Now that you mentioned stories, I believe that many of our readers will like the missionary stories, the biographies of our missionaries, and also articles on mission projects in our past history. Could you share a story or two from the encyclopedia that stood out to you?
Well, as I picked up my old habits again, and I went online and I just started randomly looking through. Let me give you an example. I came across the name of an old school teacher of mine when I was in Newcastle in Australia, high school. He was the deputy principal. My father was the principal. And so I started reading his story. I didn't know half about his life. He went as a young man with his wife to New Zealand to teach at a school. And as they're crossing across the ocean, the Tasman Sea, they got hit by a Japanese torpedo from a submarine. I had no idea. He used to teach me history. I sat in his class. I had no idea. And that they had to be rescued and tugged back into Sydney Harbour. And I also didn't realize that his son, who I attended school with, had an older brother who, when the parents were missionaries in Papua New Guinea, they gave his mother gave birth to his older brother, Graham. I didn't realize that at 2 years of age, that child died in the mission field of Papua New Guinea from diphtheria, 2 years of age. So one of the beauties of the encyclopedia is you think that you know the story of a particular person, but you can delve deeper. You can find hidden aspects that, frankly, to me, are inspirational, but they're also cautionary to me to a certain extent, because it's very easy for me in my life to become very comfortable. And as I read the story of Mr. Stan Gillis and his family, worked in Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, I didn't know he'd lost a child. I didn't know that he'd gone through hardship. And it's a reminder to me that, am I willing to move out of my comfort zone for Jesus, or am I getting too comfortable where I am? And I need to be open to God's leading.
That's a great example, Gary. And as you say, there will be, because Adventist history includes everything right up to yesterday, there will be stories of people that our readers knew or know, but have new aspects. But I think what's also exciting from my point of view is that the old encyclopedia had a limited selection of biographical stories. It only had a limited number of biographies, mostly of distinguished church leaders, whereas now the encyclopedia, it still tends to be people who are church leaders, but we've defined that in a different way so that it drills down much deeper. And so it's telling the stories now of many people who might be regarded as ordinary, and yet they were extraordinary in what they were willing to do and what they were willing to sacrifice. And that's part of what I find inspiring. Even though I'm a professional historian, as I read articles, I was finding out things I never knew. I was challenged, but I was also inspired.
Yeah, it strikes me as being a kind of a people's history. It's much more egalitarian. And one of the things I really like, one of the things that used to frustrate me with the old encyclopedia was sometimes the entries were like this long, and I wanted to know more. But really, I don't know whether you have word limits or not, but to me, whether it's 200 words or whether it's 500 words, it doesn't matter because it's on the internet. So you're not contained by physical page space in a printed book. And I love that because you can delve in as far as you want. If you just want a quick overview, you just do a quick overview, but you can read the entire article and you can even go to the sources to find out even more information.
Yes.
Now here's a question for you, David. Is there going to be any cross-referencing? For example, I was reading a piece on Pastor Len Barnard, pioneer aviation missionary in Papua New Guinea, and it references Pastor Colin Winch, who was a colleague. Will we get to the stage where I can click Colin Winch in the article and it will take me to the article on Colin Winch?
Well, we hope so. There is some cross-referencing already with references to organizations. So conferences will show the union that it was a part of and so forth. But no, you're exactly right. That is one of our dreams, if you like.
Yeah.
And I would say, in fact, if there is an enthusiastic and prosperous Adventist layperson watching who would like to see that extra functionality added, we would be very happy to hear from them. But at the moment, much of our effort has been to getting the articles up online and also to working to get more articles added. But we've always wanted it to exploit the full capacity of the internet and digital technology.
Yeah.
Doing that to some extent, but what you described is very desirable, and we're not doing that yet. So thank you for encouraging us to keep that on our to-do list.
Yes, and what we like to say is that the launch is like a birth. It's the beginning. So we hope to add new features and many updates, and definitely make the encyclopedia competitive with other similar online reference works. And I think that we already are, but we are working towards getting even better.
Oh, well, I think it's great already. I mean, I love the fact that I can click the reference and it'll take me straight down to the references below so I can see it immediately. There's very nice features. It's terrific.
Yes, and as you know, and many of our viewers will know, but not all, the old encyclopedia didn't say what the sources were that it was based on, which could be very frustrating, and now they're very fully documented.
Yeah.
That's part of our commitment to good standards of scholarship, but we still have this desire that it be a missional tool, that this be a tool that can actually, I mean, my dream would be that it would power Adventist Mission to moving forward into the reaching those unreached and underreached people groups. And I probably, providing information there is important actually, because it can show the work that is yet to be done. But I think we come back to the importance of story, really motivating factor.
And one of the wonderful things is, I mean, I sometimes joke that half my life is spent trying to find illustrations for sermons. Well, now what a wealth of opportunity to find illustrative stories for talks and seminars and sermons, etc., and even articles, David. It's a tremendous resource.
Yes, and we definitely hope as pastors, evangelists, church administrators travel to different parts of the world, that while they're in the airplane, for example, they'll check the encyclopedia for articles about that particular region they're visiting, so they come informed and can relate to the people in a better and more personal way. And I really appreciate with this new encyclopedia the balance or the diversity of articles that we have from all around the world. Growing up in France and later in Serbia, I have been told many times that Seventh-day Adventist Church is like a new sect to the area, to the country. It's like, oh, a new American sect. And I wish that back then I could name all these pioneers, local people who've been Adventists for 100 years. And as we are mentioning the value of stories, I believe that worldwide the members and people will come to appreciate their local Adventist heritage. And that's the beauty of our worldwide church.
Yeah, and I noticed when you launched the encyclopedia online, I read some of the comments that were coming up, and there were hundreds of comments coming up. And one of the themes that kept coming through, and this were people coming from all over the world, from Africa, from Asia, from Europe, and the comments were, I'm so proud of this. I'm so proud to be part of this heritage. And it wasn't in a bad way. Yeah. It was, look, I'm part of something that's much bigger. And if you're in a little country church in the Midwest of United States, or you're one of the few churches we have in a country in the Middle East or whatever, to know that you belong to a larger heritage and history and body that's doing something is very encouraging.
That's definitely true, and we hope that people will get that sense of, I am part of this bigger movement. And I appreciate your mentioning the photos, because it's not just church leaders who can use them. You know, we would love to see the person who's telling the mission story on a Sabbath morning, going to the encyclopedia website almost every church every Friday night, because they will find those extraordinary stories, but also pictures that they can project. And for people telling the children's story, even, I think there's all kinds of capacity there. And so this is something, I think what we're saying, and I wonder if you would agree, is that this is a work that can operate at multiple levels. Yes, it's good for scholars and academics, but it has a wider applicability, do you think?
Definitely. And to me, the more important applicability is going to be the way that these stories inspire and get us thinking about our heritage and what can we do to keep it going, to reinvent it, to maybe shape it in different places and whatnot, but to keep that mission spirit going. Because I tell you, as I read some of those stories, I just shake my head and say, I don't know what sacrifice is. And I just think that, that multi-level is important, but I'm really excited about that level of it, getting into homes, getting into churches, getting into the lifeblood of how we talk about what we do as a church.
Yes. We are mentioning stories and mission. Dr. Krause, in your experience, in your opinion, what are some common factors that can be attributed to the worldwide growth of Adventist Mission in history? Are there some valuable lessons from our history for Adventist Mission today?
Oh yeah, there's many lessons. I think as we look at the history of the Adventist Church and Mission, we were shaped very heavily by Ellen White, the co-founder of the church, and we can still see her influence today. And so I think when we look at mission around the world, that beautiful summary she gave of Christ's method of ministry, that the Savior came and he mingled, he showed sympathy, he ministered to needs, he won confidence, and then he bid people to follow Jesus. As we look at the history of the Adventist Church, we have been our best in mission when we have followed Christ's example.
Yes.
We have been our worst in mission when we have not followed his example. So, and I've got to hand it to these pioneer missionaries. I mean, talk about innovative, talk about creative, talk about energy. They never went to the Institute of World Mission to get training on cross-cultural sensitivity. So let's be candid. Our pioneer missionaries made mistakes. There were times that we were insensitive cross-culturally, but bless their hearts, they were on a mission and they were giving their lives for it. Today, when we think about missionaries, we think about people going to serve maybe for 5-6 years, maybe 10 years, but they'll have some annual leave in between. These people went for life.
Yes.
I mean, even my parents, when they went to Fiji from Australia, they went on a boat. There was no telephone. The only way they could perhaps communicate would be by telex or something like that. They didn't have annual leave every 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever. They went. And you travel around the world today, you go to Salusi College in Africa, you will find Seventh-day Adventist missionaries who are buried in those places.
Yes.
They never came home.
Yes.
They never came home. So yeah, there's different lessons. I mean, obviously, we've found how medical missionary work is a way that touches hearts, that can open up people to build relationships and friendships. We've seen how education, schools are a wonderful opportunity. But we've also learned that institutions can sometimes be a negative, because if we focus only on institutions, we can get to the stage where we're not doing the mingling. So there's all sorts of different facets to that. But I honestly believe that the best of Adventist mission is when we follow Christ's method as summarized by Ellen White, Ministry of Healing, page 143.
And that really highlights that mission ultimately is about people. We have to have structures in place, and of course I work at the church headquarters, I would say that, but as an historian I think it's true, you need structures in place, but the structures that send people to mingle and to win confidence. And you know, you touched on something there, which is that they didn't get training in cultural sensitivity. But what I have been struck by working on the history of Adventist mission is the extent to which Adventist missionaries, even the very early ones, got it. They got it in a way that perhaps in the 60s and 70s, their children and grandchildren got less. But the people who went out at the very beginning, you actually read what they're doing, you think, my goodness, these people are innovative, creative, they are not hidebound at all. But I think part of what comes back to it there is a love for people and a desire to share Jesus Christ with people. It really illustrates, I think, your point that we've been at our best when we have mingled, we've met needs, we've won confidence, we've worked as Jesus worked. But it's also, I think it highlights that there is still a need for missionaries today. And in some parts of the world, I do hear church members saying, do we really still need people to go as missionaries? But there is always, I think, a need for people to go and share Jesus with other people. And so I just wondered, do you think there is still a place for that? And could the encyclopedia inspire people to become missionaries?
You know, I've talked with a lot of people since working with Adventist Mission and I've asked them, what inspired you to go as a missionary, or what inspired you to go as a volunteer? What inspired you to serve? I'm shocked by how many times I can remember as a child listening to the stories of mission in my church, in my home. I listened to the old Eric B. Hare records of the stories in Burma, and it was those early childhood experiences of hearing the stories that actually translated into action as they grew older. So, you know, let's never underestimate the power of stories. So I honestly believe that this encyclopedia can be a tool in helping inspire a new generation of mission-minded young people. No question whatsoever. And David, just going back to what you were saying about the sensitivity of the early missionaries, I am aghast when I read at the conditions under some of these missionaries' work. They did not keep themselves totally separate from the people. They would sleep on the floor of the huts of people they were ministering to. They would catch the dengue fever and the malaria, etc., etc. So they actually became one with the people in a way that sometimes we only talk about today.
And that, I think, is what missiologists call incarnational ministry, representing Christ in human form to people who don't know him.
Exactly.
Yes, definitely. Mission is not a job, is not a career, is a life commitment of discipleship to our Lord Jesus Christ. And as you mentioned, all these stories, we can see that commitment and discipleship in action.
Yes.
Really, and it is only our prayer that the encyclopedia with its stories will contribute even in a small way to inspiring new generations of missionaries. So we carry on the work of our ancestors in faith, and we do the commission that the Lord gave to us, and we finish the work, Christ's work on this earth.
Exactly. And one of the exciting things too, as you read through these stories, is that these missionaries were training and mentoring new believers, and as we see around the world today, we're getting strong local leadership in local areas. We have global mission pioneers working among their own people. So we don't rely exclusively on missionaries. We still need them, and the need is growing greater. But we're also thankful that we have local people in local areas in many parts of the world who can keep the work going. But we need to face the fact that we have some cities around the world with more than 1 million people in it, and there's no record of a Seventh-day Adventist even visiting that city. How are they going to be reached if somebody doesn't go to that city? And who will that person be who goes to the city? It will be a Seventh-day Adventist missionary.
Yes, yes. And I believe not only someone who will go, perhaps someone who will go and stay, like many of the missionaries who even learned the language. I am impressed by Orly and Lillian Ford, who spent their lifetime in mission, earned the language. Then Erna Kruger, who stayed in Egypt and learned Arabic and did so much work for the church there. So sometimes the call is to go and perhaps even to stay many years, maybe even devote a lifetime to mission.
And that's perhaps one of the lessons too that I could have mentioned, that short-term efforts are very limited in their effectiveness.
Yes, yes.
True.
Yes, yes. Dr. Gary Krause, thank you for being Director of the Office of Adventist Mission. We can see your passion, but thank you also for being on the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventist editorial board and for being an ESDA author. So you have strong connections to us, and thank you very much for making the time in your busy schedule to sit down and talk with us today. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
That was Dr. Gary Krause, the Director of the General Conference Office of Adventist Mission. We invite you to read articles on Adventist Mission and Missionaries and the other more than 2,100 articles at encyclopedia.adventist.org. And if you would like to contribute, there are still many more articles awaiting authors, and there's a contact form that you can reach us there on the website, encyclopedia.adventist.org. But please go, read, and we hope be inspired. Thank you for watching us, and see you soon with another Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists editor or author. Thank you, and God bless.